1, 2, mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Can everybody hear me good out there? All right, we're getting ready to get started. Once again, thank you for everybody that's come out to join us at the Wilmington Public Library for the latest installment in the Voices of Power series. This next brother that we got coming up. So first off, you got to get out there and watch the Stand documentary. For anybody like me that grew up idolizing basketball players in the late 80s, early 90s, you knew this brother's name. It was a different name back then, but it was ringing bells already before social media. The rumor goes he went to a high school basketball camp. Air Jordan pulled him out the crowd and said, "Score." And that's what he did. He went on to LSU. And to this day, still holds the freshman record for points, average points throughout a season, 30.2. Okay? And then he got to the NBA, and he was putting up numbers. We talking 50-point games. We talking about doing all the stuff that Steph was doing before Steph. But there's a reason that y'all don't know about him. Some of y'all don't know about him. Because the NBA took that away from us. It took away his legacy. Well, they thought they was, but they didn't. So what we're going to do right now today is what we didn't do with this brother back in the 90s. We're going to make some noise, and we're going to stand right now for Mr. Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. Please, come on now, give it up. Let him know that we love him here in Wilmington, Delaware. See, you see an athlete, he jumped right up. I got to walk around. He did that on purpose. Your mic should be right there before you sit down, brother. Nah, you good right there, wherever you want. Let's get a mic check. Make sure they can hear you.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so everybody, once again, Mr. Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, please give it up. And so, before we get into your story, I gotta say, like I told him before you came out here, today's personal for me. So when I was a young kid growing up in high school and everybody was on the court, they do their move, Mike. Nah, I would do my under the rim layup, Chris Jackson. And my coach said to me, he said, "Shaq, it look good, but if you miss, you're going to be sitting on that bench." Right? So growing up, I had a picture of 3 people on my wall, Albie Shaw, Heavy D, and you. Mm-hmm. That was my wall of fame, right?
All light complexion guys.
Yeah, so he said it, baby. My wife said, "Don't come out here with all light skin jokes." I told her I wouldn't, right? So yes, that was my light skin wall of fame, right? Because I wanted shorties like Albie, I wanted to be cool like Heavy, and I wanted to play ball like you.
Appreciate that. I'm humble. Right? I'm humble.
So now with that being said, I did all that growing up in New York City. You grew up someplace completely different, Mississippi, correct?
Yes.
Please let the people know what it was like for you growing up in in a state that's known for its bigotry and racism and hatred. Please let them know what it was like growing up for you as a young man and how it affected you.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, Mississippi, man, I think it's still considered one of the most notorious places in the South. And, you know, outside of just normally living in the ghetto and what comes with that, you know, surrounded by the prostitution, the drugs, the crime, you know, you had to deal with, you know, racism was vicious. And even as a young boy that you couldn't put your finger on it all the way, you knew it because just the way you would see how your family interacted with people of a different race. You know, in private, they would be so brave, they're talking confident, but in public, they would lower their heads, they would be more submissive. And this stuff weighs on you as a child, and you find that you end up doing that same thing, and it's somewhere down the road, you know you have to break that cycle. You don't know how it's going to happen, but you know you do. And Mississippi also, they almost destroyed my chances. I'm still bitter in a way, not so much for me, but because of all the athletes that have come before me, the careers that were probably damaged. When I was invited to the Nike camp, there was a camp that I missed prior to that because they were taking my letters and hiding them. the coaches. And then I ended up finding out through this African-American doctor, and there was a lady named Miss January that was like, we were very close, and they got wind of it. So I was right on the tail end of almost missing the Nike camp. But Mississippi had a policy or rule at the time that even though Nike was going to pay for everything, I had to pay for it. And if I didn't pay for it, my eligibility would be destroyed. So Dr. Dunn had to literally put money into my mother's account. After he put money into her account and I went and played, they also told me I couldn't bring back paraphernalia that I paid for. Yeah, that's the state of Mississippi. Yeah.
So you said growing up there, even without it being said, you could kind of feel the pulse, right, as a young person. Do you remember your first outright experience with racism?
I had the first is hard.
Really? But it was so many?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you see it every day. You know, you see the microaggressions, the macroaggressions every day. You know, even the fact of being young and going to the beach and watching the Ku Klux Klan walk up the beach. And, you know, this is a known, technically, terrorist organization, right? And, like, you know, it's confusing. You know, it's mind-blowing. And you start to wonder, man, I wonder who's under those sheets, if it's somebody I know. So you begin to tread differently because you're always taught, you know, just culturally, like, look, man, you got to play the game, right? This is just the way things are. But even as a young boy, you know, you hear it and you find yourself doing it because you're conditioned, but something in your soul, this don't feel, I don't like the way this feels, you know, and it bothers you. It's like Waldo Emerson, right? He has a saying that wherever you go, there you are. You know, you can run from somebody else, but you can't run from yourself. So every night you know that you're being, you know, a coward. You know that this ain't right, but you don't know necessarily how to navigate through it at that age.
Wow. All right, that's a good answer. And you just referenced being able to feel it inside, right? But you felt something inside as well, right? Not just from the racism. It was actually a condition that you had that made growing up even harder.
Yes.
Can you please tell the people what it is and kind of explain it to some of the people that don't know?
Well, when I was younger, I used to first have blackouts. And the way they described it, I would look like I was going to sleep. So I could be watching television, or if I stood still long enough, and I would just be oblivious to everything around me. And then it eventually evolved into the muscle and vocal tics, you know, and the body movements and the aggressive body movements by and large. And I remember an incident, I was fighting this guy named Benny McGee. Like, we was up there, we were fighting in our yard boxing, you know, with gloves on. And I went into a blackout. And the next thing I know, I just popped to, and I saw his face like this, and I kept boxing. But they told me.
He didn't hit you?
Oh, they say he cocked back and hit me. But when he hit me, I just did this. And he looked.
Wow. And
I just started fighting. You know, we kept fighting. But this is what I had initially. But, yeah, it's your mind and your body on two different wavelengths. And it's like it has to feel perfect. And I use this example a lot, and it hurts every time I do. And I used to do this, playing basketball, and I would get down in defensive stand, and I would hit that hard wood that hard. And if it didn't feel perfect in my mind, I'd have to keep hitting it. Now that hurts every time. And if it doesn't roll off my knuckles, I have to keep hitting. And I couldn't soften the intensity because that's cheating. I'd have to do it until it was on the same page. So it's not just with that. It was with dribbling. It was with reading something. If it didn't make sense or if it didn't come off my lips right, it may take me 10, 15 minutes to finish a page. And then if I don't understand it, I have to go, and all of those pieces have to be there before I go to the next page, which is one of the reasons they ended up putting me in a special education class when I was in junior high, because they thought I was slow in learning. No, it's just it takes time because of the condition, not because I can't get it. And so it was from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, you're constantly trying to negotiate, you know, keeping a balance with what your mind is telling you and your body is, you know, doing.
Okay. So that's deep for a lot of people who have experienced something like that, right? And I was watching a documentary. For everybody that doesn't know, the Showtime documentary is out right now. Stand. I went and got my subscription. I wasn't even doing Showtime. But to support this brother and stand for him now, please go do whatever you got to do and watch that documentary. I promise you, it's a great film. So in the documentary, you mentioned that when you were young, somebody said to you, going back to your condition, someone said, God gives everybody a strength and a weakness, but he gives you that strength to overcome that weakness. After you being on this planet for 53 years, how can you say that you use your weaknesses to produce strength? So how did Tourette's make you even stronger, where some people would use it as a crutch?
Actually, I'm going to have pushback on that.
Okay.
I don't look at Tourette's as a weakness.
There you go.
I look at Tourette's as a strength. You know, Malcolm Gladwell has a book called David and Goliath. And in the book, he talks about, you know, how we perceive advantages and disadvantages. And he breaks down the giant. You know, he's marvelous the way he did. He talks about dyslexia, how many people with dyslexia have created so many different inventions. So Tourette's is one of those things that, and I say this all the time, that I was always taught values of being a person of character and respecting people. That was always something ingrained in me, but it adds something to it when your condition is in your face, is overt. So you can't afford to be cocky and arrogant because, you know, people see it. And so it makes you more sympathetic and empathetic when you see things because you're living with something every day that's hard to control, you know. I'm getting brain dead. What's the question? Because there's something else I want to say.
So I asked how you use that weakness into a strength, but you told me that is a strength.
Very much so. Even basketball. I wanted to stop an hour and a half. And I say this all the time. I wanted to stop playing hour and a half, 2 hours. But Tourette's said, no, you got to play me. And literally every single day, I'm not exaggerating. I mean, I get teary-eyed thinking about how I got through it. It was only God that got me through it. Because every single day I trained, it was a near-death experience. Because after that hour and a half, 2 hours, I'm huffing and puffing. I'm ready to go. She said, no. You got to do this. You got to make 10 shots. All of them got to be net. Sometimes it ain't all net. Sometimes it says when you make it, it's got to come back to you. You got to hit it off the glass. You got to hit it off the glass, all net. And so if I could be on my 9, let's say it's all net, the 10th shot skims the rims and goes in. I can't take that 10th shot and say 10. I got to start at 0. That drill may take an hour and a half. Then I'm walking off the court. Every time I dribble, whatever I do right, I have to do left. If I mess up 2-3 times, I have to back up 10 steps. I would find myself doing that drill often 2 times in a row. So that was 3 practices in one that I just did. Because I would shoot the ball and it wouldn't feel right. I have to do that same thing again. So I had to devise a strategy. And I said, if I don't do this, I'm going to kill myself. After I got through with that first hour and a half, then I had to do the Tourette Syndrome drill. I would take the ball and I would throw it towards my house. So now when I got it, and I'm dribbling home and I'm imagining, because I played imagining 2, 3, 4, 5 different invisible people playing against me. They were always this close to the basketball. And I'm trying to escape my imagination. I'm imagining I'm hitting my shoulder. I'm going up and they holding me. I'm doing this every day. So I'm exhausted. So when I finally get the ball and I mess up and I back up 10 steps, I'm too far away from the goal to have to do that same drill 3 times. Wow. And so I had to negotiate those terms every day. And I'll wake up, man, I'm crying a lot of mornings. Not because I don't love basketball. I'm crying because I say, man, because I knew what I'd have to put my body through. And I knew, man, it was scary. Because I don't know if you've ever worked out so hard where you can't catch your breath, and at the last second it comes out, and tears fall, and it scares you because you thought you couldn't catch it. This was literally every day.
Just hearing you explain that, I know myself personally, there's times when it might be a small roadblock and I might let that slow me down from accomplishing my goal. How at such a young age were you able to keep that motivation, that perseverance, where you're saying, it's like you're feeling like your life is at threat every time, but every day you're still getting up and doing it?
Man, I appreciate that question. I was raised, I eventually became Muslim, but I was raised in a Christian background. My grandmother, my aunt, my uncle, I credit this to more than anybody. They always taught me the power of God, and that also when you pray for something, pray for others more than you pray for yourself, you'll get more return. But also, they said God is not going to give you a burden that you can't bear. You know, he's giving you something that he knows you can handle. When people don't think they can handle it, it's just a misconception that they can't. He's not going to get that to you. He's trying to elevate you. He's trying to teach you something and take you places that without it you wouldn't go. Because challenges have a way of creating character possibilities where there is no challenges. And so this is what I would constantly, like every time I'm hit with like a challenge, this sense of wanting to, you know, this thought of, you have to talk to yourself. Even at that age, I was having conversations, man, come on, man, you better than this. You stronger than this. And I'm constantly having these conversations every day. And I will reinforce those negative thoughts with positive thoughts daily. And it's kind of like what also I think Frederick Douglass said, right? I prayed a lot, but it's also important to move toward what you're praying for. You have to have that combination, because he said that he prayed for freedom for 20 years and never received an answer until he started praying with his legs, right? So this was my policy day in and day out.
Wow. So the one thing, even when I was referencing earlier my childhood and having you up on my wall, back then I thought it was just because I wanted to be cool like these people. But what I realize now is growing up without a father, growing up without that male role model, you look for it outside of your house, outside of your family. And unfortunately for a lot of black men, it was in the media and sports and athletes. When you just mentioned the people that were influential to you, you didn't mention a father. Mm-hmm. Was he in your life? And if not, or if he was, how did that impact the man sitting here today?
No, still to this day, I don't know who he is. And this is what I'm about to say is the first time I'm sharing this, because when I got off the plane and I'm on my way here, I got a Facebook message from someone I've never heard of. And I never thought of this possibility because, you know, there used to be this white guy that would drive around when I got to high school. I would see him just driving around, and he'd just turn, and he'd look at me, and he'd keep on going. This was day in and day out. I'm like, and I found out later that he was a guy that never was attached to basketball. And his wife got mad when he started to want to funnel money into Gulfport High School, the school I went to. And when I got to high school, so I'm thinking, after years passed, well, maybe that's him. So they had a genealogist to do a test. I found out a lot of who were my cousins and stuff, where they were one of the biggest families in Mississippi. My older brother know his father, who's a white guy. My younger brother's father is African American. But out of all of them, I don't know. And I asked my mother numerous times, boy, get out of here, I don't want to talk about it. And so I started thinking, well, man, you know, I'm in the South with, you know, racial relations. And your mind wanders. You're like, you know what, I wonder if it was an important figure, politician, somebody, keep your mouth shut type of thing. Struck fear, and I wonder if she was violated. But then this message today came, I'm going to just paraphrase it. He said, man, I watched your documentary. The end especially hit me. He said, I'm going to tell you why. He said, I'm from New York. He said, there was a plane crash that happened in New York. And so we were I'm just paraphrasing. We were the first ones on the scene, 3 of us, 3 kids, 3 children. He said we were expecting the authorities, but they didn't show up. The leeches showed up before. So they were taking possessions off of dead bodies. They were giving them to us to hold. When the police came, we told them what had happened. They ended up saying that they had found an ABA championship ring. We found out that Wendell Ladner, who is my cousin, they say, on my father's side, had died. He played in the ABA with Dr. J and Dan Issel. He said, if, you know, this person that you're looking for is your father, do the investigation, because I think he was a rookie of the year, and it dawned on me, God, maybe we've been looking for the wrong person. I play basketball, he play basketball. He's important. He's got position. But also, my mother's on screen saying, she's looking around, because we ended up getting this footage, because I didn't know about it. I want to say it, but like in the documentary, but I can't. And I'm wondering if this, because he's only what? My mother was born 1944. He was born 1948. When you get a little older, those that year ain't, that's not big enough to, you can still see each other, right? So I'm looking at this, and he's an important figure in all of that. And it just sounds to me that it can be very, I mean, I didn't think about this before. And when he wrote that to me today, it was mind-blowing to me, like, wow, this guy, he's an important figure. He was making money. But also, she probably didn't tell me because she didn't want to tell me that he died. He was killed as a little boy. So now my mind is like, right now, I've been on the phone like, wow, this is deep. But it's tough. But also, I credit so much to my grandmother, my aunt, and my uncle. Man, because always reinforcing the positive. And I would even say, oh, well, Trickett, it's his loss. I would get mad sometimes. It's his loss. And I got to do what I got to do. You know, and then there's some days it hits you differently. Right? So I just try to stay focused and busy and keep it off my mind as much as possible. But, you know, that's a piece of you that, you know, you want to know. Who doesn't want to know that as missing? Yeah.
Well, that's deep. And personally, you know, I was blessed with a very strong mother. So a lot of those times I didn't see what I was missing because she was still filling that void. By the way, she said to tell you hi.
Tell her I said hello.
I don't like the way she said it, though. It's different how she normally says it. All right? All right, so
tell him I said
talked
hey.
About, yeah, hey. I was like, because normally I talk to my mother, I got this going on. She like, oh, I saw the flyer. I said, slow down, because your husband ain't going to like that. All right, so now you're out of Mississippi. No, you're in Mississippi, but you're playing basketball, right? So let me ask you a question. I was looking at some of your old footage. You wore, back in like junior high, you was 33, right?
35.
35. High school, 35 too? And then...
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Junior high
was 33.
33, you're
and
right.
Then 35,
Yes.
right? And then you went LSU, you was 35 as well.
Yes.
And then you went Denver Nuggets 3. Does the number 3 have a significance for you? Why did you choose that number? Is it?
I didn't choose it. They gave me that number because
And then you
it was
stuck
3.
with it?
I was a third pick.
Okay, and you was a third pick, and you played for the big 3. I'm just saying there's a lot, right? So I have another 3 that bring up that you might not know. Are you familiar with the current Denver Nuggets team?
Not totally.
No? Okay, well, the number 3, the person who wears number 3 on the Denver Nuggets grew up right here in Wilmington, Delaware, Bones Highland. Give it up for Bones Highland, NBA player. You know, I know a lot of you heard the story. But he wears number 3 right now. And, you know, I know about 3. Before you convert to Islam, you know, MeeShach, Shadrach, and Abednego. So there you go. We walked through the fire. And, I mean, even for you, it's significant because you walked through a fire, right? How did it make you? All right, so let's take a step back. I want to read something to everybody real quick, right? It's an excerpt. Okay. It goes... No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave. And the star-spangled banner in triumph doth wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. That right there is the 3rd verse of the Star-Spangled Banner, a.k.a. our national anthem. Back on March 12, 1996, the NBA rule requires attention to be paid during the national anthem. Players, coaches, and trainers must stand and line up in a dignified posture during U.S. and Canadian national anthem. The day that was announced, you got called into the front office, correct? Mm-hmm. Can you please let people know the series of events that took place from that point? The series of events, what happened? Like, did you know this was going to happen?
No. My agent at the time, Sharif Nasir, well, actually, Todd Ely, the assistant general manager, had approached me, and after practice one day, and he said, man, a journalist caught wind that you haven't been standing. He wants to do an interview. What do you say? I said, no problem. And the reason I said no problem was because I began to read more. And reading has a way of, changing the cellular and genetic structures in your body. You move differently. You think differently and move differently. And these are conversations we have, man, on the bus, on the plane, and practice as players all the time. And so I didn't see anything of it, and then academics, and universities are having these conversations all the time. So I said, no problem. After that conversation, we playing Shaquille O'Neal with Orlando Magic. I'm in shoot around. I'm thinking, it was like as many journalists, it seems, as this middle section right here. And I'm like, well, they here for Shaq because they don't really come for Denver like that.
That's not normal.
Unless Jordan come to town, Shaq come, there's a whole bunch of journalists, right? But when they come in, I see them straight line to me. And so I sit down, and still I don't know. I'm thinking, because him and I are teammates, they get ready to ask me some questions. And the first question, what do you think about the American flag? I spoke my conscience. I go home, I come back. When I came back, I walk into the arena, Jim Gillen, the trainer, say, Bernie, I want to see you. So, okay, no problem. I go down, Bernie said, the NBA called. They want to fine you and suspend you. If you don't stand, what do you say? I said, I'm not doing it. He said, well, a couple of people from the NBA office want to talk to you. And I'm assuming that it's probably two of David Stern's right-hand men. And I wish I remembered their names. And it could have possibly been Adam Silver because he's now the commissioner. But they commenced to trying to explain to me why it's important to stand. And I don't know why they identified themselves as Jewish. And look, I'm not small-minded in the sense that I don't get caught up necessarily in labels. I get caught up in truth and what makes sense. So, and we have more commonalities than we have differences, right? So I'm not one just because you say you Jewish, you gave me an example, you can't tell me nothing. But I'm listening to him. And then after he finished, I said, well, I appreciate you sharing that with me. I said, but there's two things. I said, in this context, one, I'm not Jewish. Two, this example that you're giving me don't apply to me. I said, so therefore, I appreciate it, but I'm going to decline your offer and I'm not going to stand. You get off the phone. I'm so green, man. And I say this, I've never been suspended, fined in my life. So I'm thinking there's going to be bureaucratic process, active legislation. They're going to have to deliberate. And I said, man, can I go I can go put on my uniform and play? He says, no. I'm fine. I mean, like it starts right now. He said, yeah. I said, wow. I said, can I go and sit in the stands and support the team? He says, no, they don't want you on the premises. I said, no problem. So I walk down, I see some of the guys still in the locker room. I say, hey, man, y'all have a good. He said, what's up, man? I said, I'm suspended. I'm out. And so I went home. Before I can get home, man, I get home, it's like global. It goes global. And I understood then the power of the athlete and his voice. And the fact that, thank you. And the fact that it is not so much you that's the target. They got to neutralize you, right? But more so to send a message to everybody else. That if you do this similar thing, this is what's going to happen to you. And it's intimidation tactics. And I said, yeah.
And I would have to agree because, look, it wasn't until 20 years that we saw another professional athlete take a significant stance. You did yours in 96. Cap was 2016. Mm-hmm. So obviously the message they sent out then was working. And even me as a young person and not having knowledge back then, the way that the narrative was spun, it's about his religion, he doesn't love the USA. And me being a young boy, I never stopped respecting you, but it wasn't like back now where social media can jump on and you get these different perspectives. It was just what they were talking about, and they were dominating everything that we were seeing and hearing against what you were talking about.
But what you just said too, it's like even when people say that or they leave the military off the equation, right? Well, he don't. Yeah, there's a whole bunch. Yeah, of course, there's a whole bunch in this country I don't love. I'm not ashamed of it. Rightfully so. I went to Turkey a while back. As soon as I got home from Turkey, I'm in my front yard. I mean, I'm in my, I'm in the living room. I see her because they're selling the house next door. And sometimes because it's a winding, and sometimes people confuse the driveway and they come, I said, no. So it was a huge black SUV, 2 people jump out, they go into the door, so I come out. I say, hey man, can I help you? They steady walking to me. I said, can I help you? They said, yeah. I said, well, the house, if you're looking for the house that's being sold is over there. They said, no, we're from the FBI. I said, okay. Now, for me, I contemplate death every day. We're taught that. Not in a morbid type of way, but there's a saying that contemplate death, it brings you closer to God. Because none of us gonna make it out of here alive, but we all got a choice how we want to go. And so I'm comfortable. I know. Look, this is the reality. So they come up and they say, well, we caught wind that you've been saying someone called us. Now the FBI usually, you either fishing because you got some, you got some. You know, look, I've read enough, investigated enough to know at least that much. And so they said, well, we've heard that you've been saying a lot of things against America. I said, so have millions of other people. I said, look, man, my record speaks for itself. If you want to know anything, I don't mince my words. How I feel about it. There's a lot in this country I hate, right? It's wrong. And I said, and that's just the way it is. I said, but if you want to find, I said, go look. My speeches, my interviews, I do not bend on the issue. I said, so is there a crime against that? Right? And so they ended up wanting to talk to me about basketball, trying to soften me up. So I'm entertaining the conversation. You ain't gonna solve. I'm aware, but they ended up leaving. But I found that real strange. But again, going back to the power, of people in that position. Now, even J. Edgar Hoover is declassified now, and he talked about how we have to promote more so, paraphrasing, brain dead athletes, not the Muhammad Ali types, the John Carlos, the Tommy Lees. Right? This is what we want to push to our the children. And because they saw the power of the athlete. Not that it's right. You have parents, teachers that are educators, but they know because of the visibility, right, that these athletes and these people in those positions, they're going to listen to us, right or wrong, more sometimes than their parents and stuff. And so they want to neutralize all of that. Oh, it's amazing how the system works.
It's a system. So a follow-up question on that, because you speak about the power of athletes. Were you expecting any of your current professional athletes to stand with you or stand for you, give you any kind of support? Was you expecting that? And was you surprised when you didn't get it?
I'm always hoping and expecting the best out of us. You know what I mean? I literally, thank you. Yeah. This is just the way I am. There's a saying in Islam that why is it that when you don't think of each other, you don't think of the best? Right? Because we have a tendency to want to think of the worst. So, but I'm not surprised. I wasn't surprised. There were people who spoke out. There's always going to be that. But historically, you look at the pattern of history, there's always going to be the relative few that speak out compared to the many that don't. So I knew that the masses weren't going to speak out because they keep us in a perpetual state of fear and won't. You know what I mean? We don't want to lose, so we're scared of it, right? And it's a natural, so. Agreed.
So we're getting close. We're in about the third. We're getting close to this, coming up to the fourth quarter.
My answer because
no, it's all right. Long. This is no.
You're long-winded.
They want to hear it, and we're going to give everybody, like I said, a chance to ask some questions coming up. But before we do that, just a couple things, right? You spoke about everything that you went through then and how you felt and who didn't step up, whatever the case may be. How do you look at now, 20-something years later? Do you see a change in the NBA? And just to let you know, I asked this brother in advance, were there any questions, and he said there's nothing off the book. He said he was transparent and he wanted you guys to know anything. So keep that in mind when you're asking your questions too. if there's anything, have you seen a change in today's current NBA? What do you see happening? Because it seems like you were ahead of your time in terms of seeing everything going on. I was even watching a documentary, and you were piecing some things together at the time about David Stern that just didn't make sense. So can you kind of talk to that and maybe enlighten us on how you feel about the current status of the NBA and the professional athlete?
Definitely, there's some changes, but I definitely don't believe the changes are to the level where it's going to change the relationship to power. And what I mean is, you know, Richard Itten, the NBA projects itself as being progressive. Compared to the NFL, seemingly it is. And I've said this all along, even in the beginning stages when this thing happened, I said, I don't think they're just naturally altruistic, you know. I think that they're just more savvy in how they deal with it. And I brought up a couple examples. You have Westbrook and James Harden when they were in China. You know, the Uyghur problem, the genocide that's occurring there. Well, the NBA has a practice facility in that part of the world. They're doing business. So when they were asked a question, they were about to answer it. Somebody from the NBA said, "Don't answer that." I thought y'all allowed y'all players to take position. The fact that you allow somebody to do something, first of all, means you ain't free. And the second part of that is, you know, why did you stop them from communicating that? And so even with what's happening to Kyrie right now, right? Kyrie, look, he showed something. Look, man, you have a world of academia. They engage in tough conversations, whether you like it or not. That's a part of the world of academia. You have Max Kellerman that say, well, if one thing is like off, you throw everything away. That's academically responsible. No, you engage it. Where does this idea come from? Right? You have a conversation about it. You don't throw the baby away with the dirty bathwater. That ain't the way it works. And so even the way they're handling him is just a different type of politics. Right? So as long as you're in line with what the NBA wants you to follow, they're for you. But when you step out of that line in that box, then they're against you. And so Richard Itten, this political scientist, says something real heavy. He cautions against viewing protests as inherently revolutionary, because once it becomes routine and accepted, it's easily molded and shaped into the overall elite hegemonic understanding of things, right? So in other words, they can package it, encapsulate it better. They can monetize it. They put on these shirts. They can create shoes, Nike supports, right? And then it loses its thrust. It loses its power, because now everybody's an activist and it's easy to do. And so this is the trick. This is the game that they play. And I'm like, no, I'm not going for it. So I know the NBA is just, to this day, they've been having all of these, they say we're not the same. They're having all of these conferences on social activism. And I said this the other day, I said, look, if you're no longer like the David Stern years, and David Stern is another issue too, if you could remind me to go on that. But if you're no longer there, why don't you reach back to those you know that's been wronged and involve them in the conversation? Craig Hodges, what he did, not only forget him being a citizen, he has the right to hand recommendations for the community. Even if he wasn't a citizen, God gave him the right, if you see a wrong, to suggest those things. And so the people that were mad at him, no, you should have been mad at the people that were mad at him for doing that, because he is in the right to do that. I said, Craig Hodges has yet to be invited. I said, he's broke 3 all-star three-point contests. Y'all should be having him at the half court in a throne until somebody either match or break his three-point. Pay him handsomely for it. Have him going around speaking. The NBA did a documentary with him. His mistake was he went in business with the NBA. He has a documentary out. He can't show it. Why can't he show it? Because the NBA has footage on it, and they have rights to his story because they provided footage. And because this footage is on there, they are not going to release it to be shown to the public because they say it makes the NBA look bad. No, is it true what he's saying? So if you're so progressive and you're no longer like those other days, expose that, say, you know what, this was wrong. This was the NBA of old. But the fact that you haven't, you're still the same NBA.
Still the same NBA. There you go. There you go. Give it up. So I honestly feel like this interview has gone through in the blink of an eye. You like how I did that, right?
That's a good one. I like that.
Because in the blink of an eye is your brand new book right now.
Yes.
Because you're now an author as well. When we're done here, we are selling the book in the back corner. And then after that, Brother Abdul-Rauf will be all the way in the back of the library signing the books for those who purchased them. Okay? So what we're going to do, we're in the fourth quarter. I just want to go through a couple, like we're coming down to this clock. So I'm going to give you a couple crunch time questions. You're going to shoot me one-word answers. All right?
All right. That's all.
Who was your favorite player growing up?
Dr. J.
Who was the best player you ever played with? All right, then. All the smoke, all them questions. You dig
The
me?
reason I'm going to say this is because of where his status is in the NBA.
Shaquille O'Neal. Who's the best player you ever played against?
Rod Strickland.
And he played against Mike, y'all. Rod Strickland from NY, by the way. Shut up. I'm sorry. My fault, you got me, because I didn't expect that one. I don't think a lot of people.
He was crafty.
Oh, my gosh. What would you think, what was in your mind, because I know you had a lot of those, you was dropping numbers on Cat's Head. What was your best college game and best NBA game in your mind? Best college first, LSU.
See, when you say best, I'm trying to think of overall numbers, not just the points.
And also just think about the context, because you did some things against your old state, too.
Yeah. I would say the best game in college was a 55 against Ole Miss.
There you go. NBA?
In points wise, I'm gonna have to say 51 against Stockton.
There you go. Put it on, and I didn't like. Thank you, I appreciate. No, I was sitting at home taking that person like, yeah, get him. All right.
Yeah,
So, last one in the crunch time questions is: who is your favorite player to watch now in the NBA?
I'm happy to disappoint you. When you ask me questions about favorites, it's always difficult because I love so many of them.
Okay.
Just like you can foods, music. It's hard to. I'm feel guilty like I'm.
Okay. Well, name your top 3 most exciting players in the NBA right now.
Right now, man. You know what? I love watching Kyrie. He's crafty. You know, inside, outside. I love watching Curry. Curry can.
He watched you.
Can score many different ways. And you know what?
Hey, this is his 3.
I mean, I like watching him too, but you know what? Right, you caught that. but you know what? I look at it a little differently. I look at skill level. You know, like LeBron he's gonna go down in history as one of the greats for sure. But when I start dissecting games, he's not a phenomenal ball handler. He's not a phenomenal free throw shooter. Phenomenal outside shooter. He gets it done, but skill-wise, fluidity, you know, he's not a high-level skill guy. So I kind of look at guys, I'm like, man, he can. Chris Paul, man, he makes it look, he'll come out, he get you, and he'll end up with 25, 30, getting you involved, because he's smooth, he's methodical. So those guys I like, because basketball is just not one speed, it's just not about strength. It's the nuances of knowing when to use your finesse, when you use your speed, when to slow it down, angles to choose, you know, how to get a guy off guard, get your shot up. It's just so much that people don't know those little nuances. And I'm watching, I'm like, wow, I love it.
Love it. Yeah. There you go. All right, so this is the buzzer beater. This your last one. Knowing everything that you know right now, sitting here on February 9th, 2023, would you do it all over again, and why?
For one, I've never stopped.
There you go.
Yeah. And I don't ever plan on stopping. I made a commitment, man, a long time ago. You know, when I was married at the time, and I remember HBO wanted to do an interview. And I said, I told my wife at the time, she said, what you gonna tell him? I said, I'm gonna tell you. You know, and I know there are times when, one thing I don't ever plan on doing is compromising the truth. Like if hurting your feelings and the truth, hurting your feelings is gonna be secondary. And so I just made a decision that I'm gonna live and die with a free conscience and a free soul, whether people like it or not. And so if there's something on my mind, thank you. If there's something I gotta say, and I learned a long time ago, it's not necessary. One, you'll never know everything. So some people, they're like, well, I just want to know this, and I want to know everything before I move forward. That's going to almost guarantee you're not going to do anything because you never know everything. So my thing has always been, even if I got a little information, I'm going to, at the minimum, I'm going to share it. And my philosophy is, I'm going to share what I have, and God will show me the rest, right? So that's just, and so she would be like, I said, well, I'm just going to tell the truth. She said, yeah, but when you do interviews, they burn down our house, we can't get no job. And I felt that. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to apologize in advance to you. I said, to you, my children, and the ones that may come, I said, I made this decision that this is the way, this is the man you married. This is the man I'm trying to become. And if God wills, I'm not going to fail in becoming this. And I said, so I made this decision to live and die with a free conscience, free soul, whether you or anybody else like, because the truth means more to me than anything. And so all she could do is just drop her head because she knew I meant business. Yeah. You know, so I don't ever plan on stopping.
Please give it up for Brother Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. Please, if you enjoyed it as much as I did, man, you done drop these jewels. Thank you, my brother. And like I promised, we are going to get a couple questions right off. So if you got a question, you could come stand up right here. I'm going to come down with the microphone. We're going to keep the question short, and then hopefully then we're going to get the book signing. For you people who don't want to ask questions, once again, books are available in the back, so you can go and get that started. All right? First question. Introduce yourself and ask question.
Hello, I'm Marshall, your sister from Mississippi, Jackson, Greenwood.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
One of the first questions people ask me about is racism. I was in Delaware less than a month before I saw my first pickup truck with a rebel flag on the back of it 4 years ago. And I think that was a reminder to keep my eyes open. Mm-hmm. How did the racism and experiences that you dealt with in Mississippi prepare you for the racism and the less overt racism that you experienced throughout your professional career?
Oh, you know, great question. Whether it's racism, whatever it is, poverty, you name it, which oftentimes is associated with racism. You know, there's a saying in Islam, and I hope I don't mention it right now. And this was kind of like, even though I wasn't a Muslim then, I was a Christian then, it was the same type of education I was getting. It says God wants to favor those who are being oppressed and to make them leaders. And what I get out of that is that anytime you're going through some type of racism or something like that, some challenge, some injustice, if you can weather the storm, right, it only is going to make you stronger. They have a book out called How Children Succeed, and they say in the initial stages, those children who have a silver spoon in their mouth, they're going to progress faster naturally than people who don't. But because you grow up in poverty, you grow up struggling where a lot of people don't, when you get to that college and when you get to places where now you got to earn it, they say statistically those people excel much faster than the ones who had a silver spoon. So this is how racism and all those things prepared me. Like, I didn't know this until I had a podcast interview not too long ago, because I talk about critical thinking a lot. Like, I didn't grow up in that type of family, but dude, he said, man, Tourette Syndrome is critical thinking. I said, huh? He said, the fact that you were analyzing living over the tracks at that age and your conditions, the fact that you were trying to think about scenarios and angles, he said, that's critical thinking. He said, you thinking about all of this stuff as a child, and I said this before in my own way, but not like he said it. People look at oh, you didn't stand for the flag, or you said what you said on HBO, as if though that just happened. No, I've been living with this as a black boy all my life. I've been processing this stuff. I've been protesting internally until I can understand how to do it externally. You know, so that's how it's prepared me. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
My name is Eva. I have a question. Knowing that, you know, everything you've been through, and you have a lot of fans, a lot of people who read your book, a lot of people who saw the documentary Stand, you've endured a lot. And there's a lot that has transpired throughout the NBA. A lot of times when players like Kyrie are expected to apologize for their wrongdoing, has anyone at the upper level, David Stern, Adam Silver, has anyone apologized to you? Any owners or anyone have apologized to you for the treatment that you've given?
Absolutely not. I don't expect them to. And it's just like I said not too long ago, I was asked the same question. I can care less about their apology if it's not backed up with something. That's like, let's just face it, that's like certain whites apologizing for reparations, but slavery, but don't want to give reparations.
All right.
So people's career was damaged. Their livelihood was damaged. We as African Americans, we don't have generational wealth. So oftentimes we have to take care of not just our immediate family, we taking care of a whole bunch of families. And then we spend our life honing a skill. And then just because I say something, not that it was wrong. I'm not beating people up in clubs. I'm not high on alcohol or drugs. I said something that academics and people all over the world saying. And you condemn me for it and ostracize me for it? No, it's got to be bigger than an apology. David Stern, a lot of people don't know this. And this, they kept out of the documentary. Why? Because the NBA has footage. There's politics and everything. But what I wanted in there was this, what I'm going to tell you now. All of this talk about, basketball and sports, like church and state are separate. Basketball and politics don't go. As they were suspending me and fining me, I read an article some years later, right before the Iraq War, before they already knew, the government knew they were going, but before they announced it to the people that we're going in, they had a meeting in Davos, Switzerland. It's an old publication called Spotlight. Now they're called the American Free Press. You can go look it up. They had a meeting like these Bilderberger meetings, economic forums. The top echelon, the Colin Powells, the heads of state were invited. If you had been to that meeting before, prior, it was you had to pay $10,000. If this was your first time, you had to pay $15,000. The gist of that meeting was to see which corporations was going to take what of the natural resources out of Iraq. They were stealing from the nation. They had a list of people that was invited to that meeting. David Stern was one of them. I said, what you're doing, this is why I'm standing against this symbol, right, that's been codified as a sacred mantle for American exceptionalism. This is why, because what you're doing is more devastating than what I did. You're part of raping of a nation, genocidal effects of murder, right? But you want to talk to me about not standing and find me? This is the hypocrisy. Right. Yeah.
Thank you. You're truly an inspiration.
Thank you. Pass the mic to the next person, and we got to keep the questions because you already see security.
Well, then I'm going to keep the answers.
Got you.
My name is Rashad Khan. You share a lot, and I just wanted to get your opinion. And like you share so much about your life, and you sacrifice to fight for the rights. And this Cantor has a bounty because he spoke out just like you did. There's a bounty on his life. That's one question. How do you feel about that? And are you disappointed with someone like LeBron? He doesn't speak out against China, and he's more worried about his pocket. And yes, everyone has their bills. Everyone has their responsibility. We can't count pockets. But does that kind of disappoint that someone so large doesn't use that platform to speak out like you did, and you gave up so much?
Well, thank you. Concerning Enes Kanter, look, it's a tragedy that this takes place when a person articulates their views about something that a whole bunch of people know and talk about, and it's just a sign of weakness, and again, intimidation tactics to send a message to everybody else. As it pertains to LeBron, it's always to a degree disappointing when people are because there's a saying, to whom much has been given, much is expected, right? When you don't hear certain things. However, I try to give people grace because not everybody's going to be a public speaker. Not everybody's going to be on the front lines with a gun in their hand. So there are some people that, but I do believe this, if you open your mouth, speak the truth, right? But if you can, some people like they don't have that, there's a saying in Islam that if you see a wrong, change it with your hands. If you can't, change it with writing or speaking out about it. If you can't, feel it in your heart, but know that that's the weakest of faith. So some people like to give, let me give you this money so you can keep doing what you're doing, right? But yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Brother
Last
Mahmoud.
two.
Assalamu alaikum, how you doing?
Wa alaikum salam.
Little man wants to say hi before I...
Jackson? Say hi.
Hey, young fella, how you doing?
I want him to get a shine, so...
Okay.
I just want to wanted to ask a question. He loves basketball.
Yes.
He likes to watch it. I have like a tons of balls at home for him. What advice would you give a mom like me to encourage my child, like going forward, like supporting his talent, like, you know, just his interest in watching basketball, playing with balls? What would he give me?
Well, one, you just need one basketball. but no, seriously, you know what? Just, this is what I tell people, man. Just give him the ball and see what he does with it. Encourage him as much as possible, especially at this age. Just keep encouraging him. But also, it's a lifestyle. And some people now are getting what do you call it, worn out. Like they play so many AAU games. I forget the word, but they're doing too much. So burnout. So just at his own pace, but just be encouraging. Put him in those surroundings, and he may end up gravitating. He may end up saying, you know, Mom, I don't want it, but I thank you for encouraging me, and he'll see possibilities in other things. Yeah, thank you.
Last question for the night. There we go.
Brother Mahmoud, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure's mine.
I learned about you for the first time last year from a colleague of mine. And around the same time your book came out, and I downloaded on my Audible, and I just couldn't shut it off. Like, I'm in the gym listening to it, and I'm just waiting for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Thank you.
And while I'm listening, I'm seeing, like, this guy is a human just like me. But how can he hold on to this, so much that was wrong to him? So much pain, anger, every day, millions being taken away from you. Even us fans of the game, like, imagine what you could have been and the stats we could have seen and the games we could have seen. I know you're a big, like, there's so much that we as fans have lost out on, and you have lost out on as well. Now, as time went on, I realized, like, there's people like me and many other people here who probably had something stolen from them or lied to or cheated on. How do you feel now after everything's coming to light with the documentary, Stand documentary coming out, which was amazing, by the way,
thank you.
and your book and all this, you know, events and all these high-level magnitude players talking greatly about you? Do you feel some type of peace now with your entire story coming out?
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, I was at peace when I was in Denver, when I did what I did. I've never lost that sense of peace, and it goes back to, like, whatever I'm going through, right? I know that I'm going through for a reason, and that, yeah, you have your challenges, right? Ups and downs, but generally speaking, I was always at a level of peace. You know, so it's not like I'm at more peace now necessarily, because I can't totally, I can't totally, though, be at peace, because as the saying, the old adage goes, right, there's no peace without justice. You know, so, but what's gotten me through all of this, and you didn't ask that, what's gotten me through a lot of things that people don't register, is they look, oh, this guy's a radical, he's this, because they listen to the media. But you can't do this type of thing, whether it's Kaepernick, whether it's all these other people, Muhammad Ali, you name it, Paul Robeson, you name it, Nat Turner. You can't do this type of thing. And I'm nowhere near patting myself on, I got a long way to go. You can't do this if it doesn't come from a place of love. Jesus, peace be upon him, today would be considered a domestic terrorist, an extremist. He tells his disciples, sell your garments to buy swords. Now, we're taught peaceful protests, candlelight vigils, because the system is not going to set up something so that you can revolt and change it in the real sense where the relationship of power changes. But he says, sell your garments to buy swords. Why? Because he was speaking truth to power, and power had overstretched its bounds and became oppressive, right? So now he's getting ready to engage them physically and militarily, right? But we're pacified so much with, you know, putting us to sleep, love, 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 that we forget sometimes this message. And so, but was Jesus about love? Yeah. But also Jesus understood something. And somebody coined this phrase, I don't know who it was. Justice is what love looks like in public. So sometimes we don't think like, hey man, I love humanity. I love people. So when I see abuse, when I see tyranny, man, it kills me, because I know what it feels like every single day. I don't care what color you are, what your ethnicity is, what your religion is. I don't care your gender. That bothers me. And this ain't no show. It bothers me. And I can't hold it in no more.
Great answer. Brother Mahmoud, so that was the last question, but Dr. Leo drove all the way here from Philadelphia. Can you give us one more question?
I'm here.
He said it's going to be short. There you go.
I have more of a thank you. May Allah reward you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. May Allah reward you more.
I was born Muslim in America, and I had it rough, you know. And during my time, I tell a lot of other Muslims that I was like the only one in the schools. If it wasn't for my brother, you know, I wouldn't have been comfortable. So I just wanted to give a testimony real fast that I am a basketball fan and player and athlete. And watching you, like, I was watching you play, you know, when I was young. And like, oh, man. And I heard about the different, he got Tourette. That's why he could shoot off the glass so well, because he practiced this shot 1,000 times. And I said, oh, yeah, is that right? Well, that mean I got to practice 1,000 times.
And get Tourette.
Hey, listen. Yeah, hey, listen, I dig it. So I want all that to say this, that your story, I don't know how many thank yous you get, but your life, your sacrifice, really inspired others. You know what I mean? It inspired me to, like, push against the odds. And it wasn't just racism that I had to push against. It was also the fact that I was a black Muslim. You know what I mean? And I had to practice my religion and show it. You know what I mean? So I want to thank you. You know what I mean? And may Allah reward you and continue what you're doing.
Thank you more. May Allah reward you more.
Give it up for Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. Please give it up for him. Stan, give it up. This brother done dropped jewels off to us. For everybody that went and purchased your books, we will be signing books in the back of the library. So please make your way back there, and we're going to finish and wrap it up. Thank you once again for everybody. Everybody stay seated. We're going to let Mahmoud out.